The M16 rifle, as serving with U.S. troops today, is not the same gun as was adopted back in the 1960s. There have been a lot of changes and a lot of improvements that resulted in the M16A2.
The M16A2 was developed by Colt Industries in response to a number of suggestions and recommendations by the Marine Corps. And in appreciation for it, serial number 1 was presented to the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and today visitors can see that in the National Museum of the Marine Corps at Quantico, Virginia.
Well, the M16A2 proved that if you spend enough time, money, and developmental effort, you can correct practically any flaw, real or perceived, in an Army rifle. The Army went back after Vietnam and said, okay, we have this problem, that problem, the next problem, let's fix them all. They replaced the barrel, they replaced the upper, they replaced the buttstock, they replaced the pistol grips. I mean, fore ends, what's left except the lower receiver, which they refused to abandon, maybe because that was the one that had the serial number on it, and there was an accounting problem otherwise. I don't know, but the consequence of that was that it wedded them forevermore to a magazine that had been designed to save weight.
You know, when you're making things for the government might want to do different things with them. So instead of differentiating between what would be an M16A2 barrel that would just be on a standard rifle or a gun that would be combined with an M203 grenade launcher, why not just make all the barrels the same? So the M16A2 appears to have a heavy full-length barrel, but it's not.
This gun has the longest service life of any American military shoulder arm, and continues to this very day to stand watch 24/7 over our freedoms and liberties. And it's it turned out to be a modular gun. I mean, who would have known when we were looking at it in the 1960s that today it would be so versatile.
So let's take a look at a couple of AR pattern rifles here that are pretty much in the original M16 configuration as it was first issued, and then the M16A2 as it was improved. The M16 came out with this slotted flash hider. Now the problem with that is that it created areas that could catch on brush and twigs. So the first change was they kind of filled in the edges of that flash hider, made it what was called a bird cage flash hider. The problem with that is that gas directed downward would kick up dust and reveal the position of the shooter. So at the M16A2, they went to the flash hider that was bird cage on the front. It was filled in on the bottom, and that also served as a bit of a muzzle brake. The original M16 had no forward assist. Now that was to help chamber a round if the action got sticky. That was a consideration in the early M16 use, which is less so as the match of the gun and ammunition improved. You'll also notice a deflector, a brass deflector, built into the frame of the A2. That allows a left-handed shooter to fire this gun without throwing the brass back directly in their face.
One of the most important aspects of combat marksmanship is getting the elevation right, knowing the distance, knowing the bullet drop. And so a drum-style rear sight was created for the M16A2, which allowed the rifle to be zeroed and also windage and elevation adjustments made by the individual rifleman in the field.
This is a civilian commercial semi-automatic version of it that would be released by Colt in the 1980s. The civilian semi-auto AR-15A2s, they bear strong resemblance to the military version of the M16A2. And the changes to the firearm are sort of significant. Primarily, the M16A2 is adapted to make the most of the ballistic characteristics of the new SS-109 bullet, a bullet that will be mounted in a cartridge that will be adopted into U.S. military service as the M855 green tip cartridge. The fire control components of the new A2 design differ from the old M16A1. The safety selector settings on the M16A1 were safe, semi-automatic, and full automatic. On the M16A2, however, it's safe, semi-automatic, and burst, meaning that with each pull of the trigger, 3 rounds are fired, requiring the shooter to then release the trigger to fire 3 more rounds. And as the next evolution of the M16A1, the A2 carries the American military from the streets of Mogadishu to the Korangal Valley in Afghanistan.
When it comes to real M16A2s, there are not a lot of them available to civilians due to federal firearms law. But if you have a lower receiver, you can put an M16A2 upper on top of it. That's all the time that we have for this week. If you like this show and you're not an NRA member, you need to join right now. Go to AmericanRifleman.org. I'm Mark Keefe, and I'll see you next week right here on American Rifleman Television.